Hello, everyone. Welcome. Couple people still coming in. We'll wait a few more minutes. We have a couple more people joining us. Right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's week is going well. As folks join, we'll bring them up to speed. Thank you so much for joining today's discussion, Trick or Treat, our discussion on capital campaigns. My name is Heather Foss. I'm the Assistant Dean of Development and Alumni Relations at the University of Maryland, Francis King Carey School of Law. I've been in that position about 5 years, and this year I'm the co-chair of the Institutional Advancement Committee for AALS. Prior to my time at Maryland Law, I was at the University of Maryland College Park, where I did fundraising for libraries, and before that I spent almost 7 years at Catholic University Law School. So I am no stranger to capital campaigns, and I can say they have been different everywhere I have worked, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with all of you today. So just a little information about how the session today is going to go. We're going to start with just a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation, just to kind of level set the discussion based off of current best practices and ideas. Following that, I'm going to do a little bit of surveying with the group where we can sort of just get a sense of where everybody is. And then depending on the number of people we have joining, we'll go into breakout groups for further discussion and then come back for a quick report out. So if you have to hop off or if you need to come back, just so you have an idea of what everything looks like today. I would like to ask that everybody, if you have your name up, to please add your institution into your name as well, just so everyone can see where you're from. And we will go ahead and get started, and I will share my screen. And I apologize, I have a little bit of a cold, so if I start coughing, I will try and wrap it up as quickly as I can. Okay. So let me, 1 second. Can everybody see the screen? Start the slideshow. All right, campaigns, tricks or treats. We'll hop right into it. So I wanted to start with a couple of basics, and I feel like some of the basics nobody's going to like to hear, or at least maybe our presidents and some of our VPs won't like to hear it. But when you're in the stages of getting ready to begin a campaign, I always have to recommend that you hire a campaign consultant to determine the viability of your institution to actually begin a campaign. In my personal experience, I have been at institutions who have done this different ways. And you are always much better prepared with the tools you need if you have someone or a team of someone who can come in and have those difficult conversations with your leadership, but also assess your viability for a campaign at a given time. Also, make sure as you guys are making this decision to go forward with a campaign, you are engaging your board, your campus leaders, and other stakeholders incredibly early in the discussion. Make sure you're determining who your campaign leadership team is and clearly define their scope and goals of the campaign. In our most recent campaign, we made the decision as a university to have campaign leadership as opposed to individual schools. And when we're talking about tricks or treats, I will say that one was a trick because it didn't actually work very well for any of us. So we can talk more about that a little bit later. Create your case for support. I know this is something that can feel very overwhelming, but I'm going to talk a little bit later about this and why this is such an important step during this process. Also, build your communications and marketing plan through the silent phase, the campaign launch, all the way to the campaign celebration. Things will move and they will shift along the way, but being prepared from the beginning in terms of your campaign plan and your marketing is incredibly important, sort of as your guide star throughout the entire process. Build your gift pyramid and identify incentives and leverage opportunities to encourage giving during your campaign. And then finally, be prepared to pivot, reevaluate. As we've seen this past year, anything can happen. And I'll be curious to hear, how everyone's campaigns are faring during the coronavirus and what changes were made to accommodate different behaviors in giving during this time. I know that's all pretty self-explanatory and all pretty basic, but I did want to make sure that we were all starting sort of from the same launch point. So what is a feasibility study? This is the opportunity to find out if your case for support, for need, whatever you want to call it, is compelling to stakeholders and if your goal is within reach. I've certainly been at places where you have a new president coming in and they suddenly want to have $1 billion campaign. And it sounds really good and it sounds like a great opportunity. But unfortunately, if you build it and they come, doesn't always work for capital campaigns and for all institutions. So the feasibility study should have two goals. You want to gain feedback and information to guide your planning and the projects you're trying to raise money for, and also create interest and awareness among key supporters early on. We all know sort of the principles of the gift pyramid. So we really want to make sure we're identifying those key supporters who are going to help us, build the bulk of our campaign before we even launch. And the study should also answer how much you can expect to raise, if your case is resonating with your donors, and if you have the support of your board, leadership, and other key stakeholders. In some cases, this, can be just law school specific, and others, it might have to be a community-wide study to see who you're competing with in your region and if there's sort of a drain on resources. So, having someone who can do this work for you and be objective is really important as you're starting to plan. So the case for support. This is the document that really helps center the objectives for the campaign. You want to make sure it includes several components, but of course, these are all going to vary based off of your institution and your audience and what you're really trying to convey. In some cases, you do need to have that history, and that can be a really compelling part of your case study, particularly if you're planning on building a lot of support among alumni who might see themselves in that history. You want to talk about your mission, who you serve, and what you champion. This is where you're inviting in friends and introducing yourselves to an entire new pool of potential supporters. This should be compelling and exciting, and really be the part where you're trying to get buy-in from other individuals. What is your vision for the future? This should really tie to your mission, to who you serve and what you champion. How are you going to, project forward 5, 10, 15 years? And why do you need partners in fulfilling that vision? And then talk about your reason, your need, and then how these individuals can be involved and how they can engage with you in identifying and building out these solutions and ultimately having impact, which is really what you want to be able to show from all of your efforts during this campaign. This should really grab readers' attention, but also be effective if the audience doesn't spend much time with it. So you're trying, I I can understand how that can be really frustrating when you're spending all of this time on a document. We don't like to create a lot of collateral these days, have a lot of papers lying around. I have really been a strong advocate to stop producing case statements and sharing them with large groups of people. But think about what works for your institution and how something like this could be compelling. Is it an interactive case for support? Is it a micro website that explains all of your needs and has other components? Do you share your case through a targeted social media campaign? In this day and age, these are all things that we should be thinking about because, a nicely bound pamphlet doesn't really get as much traction as it used to. But the point still stands that putting the time and the effort into creating this document and having all of these questions answered and all of these components readily available to use is a very important part of the campaign planning process. So now we'll talk a little bit about some tricks or some treats. So, what are some tricks that come along with capital campaigns, especially if you currently have a say in how your institution is going to move forward? These are good things to consider. So leadership may champion a campaign without an understanding of the commitment, which could really set fundraisers up for failure. If a team is under-resourced, the goal can feel really insurmountable and lead to a lot of fatigue and turnover in your institution, which doesn't help anybody get ahead. This is one of those areas where a strong feasibility study can help, because with any campaign, when you're trying to raise resources, you need to invest resources in fundraisers, in prospectors, in data cleanup, or you're just not going to be able to hit those goals. Campaigns can feel a bit onerous and grow stale over time. I'm a big advocate for having a well thought out marketing and communications plan, but also building in sort of leaks and other areas that can help the campaign feel fresh and new throughout the 6, 7, 8 years that you're really going through this process. It also can be hard to maintain momentum over several years. I think we've really tried to fix some of this by having, our silent phase, our launch, and really trying to shorten that window where we're very public with the campaign. But internal momentum also can be something that is hard to sustain. And then if everything is a campaign, is it really anything that's special at this point? A lot of institutions are jumping from campaign to campaign and they're getting bigger and bigger. And at some point, is it a campaign or is it just how we do business? So, we need to sort of think about how our donors see that and how our leaders see that when we're trying to think about the future. But some of the treats are that a successful campaign planning session can really keep a fundraising operation focused and strategic over a sustained period of time. With that planning comes, I think, a good way to set your annual goals, your metrics. All of that can really help, especially as a leader or as a manager, to keep your team focused on pushing everything forward to a very set goal. You can creatively create urgency throughout a campaign with matches, challenges, other opportunities, other things that are happening at your institution that can really add sort of that extra spark or that extra reason to give. We see this with, micro campaigns and, other specific launches that should really be part of the early campaign planning, but we should also be nimble enough to identify them and introduce them throughout the campaign if things start to feel a little stale. The good prospecting work for the campaign can benefit your institution for several years. Taking the time to really evaluate and measure your database, know who your donors are, and keeping that data current is an ongoing process. That's something that people or leaders are really willing to invest in the beginning stages of a campaign. So building that in can really help your program for several years to come. Increased efforts toward discovery do help build a sustainable pipeline. Ideally, when you are launching a campaign, you are hiring a lot of new fundraisers. And I know this isn't always the reality, and we can talk about this, but ideally that should be what happens. And those fundraisers are going to need prospects. And once the low-hanging fruit is identified and booked for the campaign, a lot of people start turning to discovery work. So you're spending a lot of time with folks who otherwise wouldn't have been seen potentially for a couple years down the road. It's also a great opportunity to engage your donors in leadership. I think sometimes we, are trying to think of all of these wonderful volunteer opportunities, and there aren't always great fits, particularly for some of our bigger donors, but serving as a leader during a campaign and helping identify their network can be a great opportunity for those folks. And you can also include current students and young alumni in these efforts. Introduce them to what a campaign is, use their stories, use them as volunteers, and help build a culture of philanthropy as part of that effort. So I hope I sped through that quick enough so we have time for discussion and polls. Let me stop sharing, and I will pause and see if anyone has any quick questions or thoughts. You can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, or you can throw something in the chat. All right. Well, then I am going to hop and do some polls really quick because I want to get a sense of where everyone is before we go into our breakouts. So let me launch the survey really quick. And I think it's gonna launch it all at once. And then I have a couple of discussion topics that I want to launch into from that. So let's see, I just put this out. So if you guys could just go ahead and start filling that out. The first question is just select your campaign status. Are you in a capital campaign? Is everyone seeing the pool?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the first is your campaign status. Who's responsible for campaign leadership at your school? For those in a campaign, do you feel you were adequately prepared and resourced? For those not in a campaign, do you feel as if you know what you need to be properly resourced? For those in a campaign, do you feel confident you'll hit your campaign goal? And then if you do not feel confident, what is that reason? All right, so I'll let everyone continue putting those in. So I want to talk a little bit about question 2, who's responsible for campaign leadership at your school? And so I wanted to talk to folks, if you're part of a larger university campaign, do you feel you have enough say in setting the goals and figuring out the best way to have that campaign at your school? Does anybody sort of want to share their experience there or any feedback as a law school as part of a larger university campaign? I can share a little bit, and it looks like of the respondents, about 80% of you are finding yourselves in that situation. And so, we are sort of in that situation at my law school currently. And I think it's been great from a resources standpoint. A lot of stuff has been financed and run centrally, which is really great. But at the same time, some of those resources, I think, have to be equitable. And so not everyone has been able to ramp up in the same way that or in the way that they might need to in order to meet some of their campaign goals in terms of, fundraisers versus central staff. At our school, each school is very separate. So we don't really have central campaign goals. They're all very focused within the schools. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but something that I think we're all working through. And, we're all in the last year of our campaign. And I think we're all going to succeed, which is good. Does anyone else have any feedback?
I do.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, I'm at the University of Oregon School of Law. So we just finished our campaign this year as part of the University of Oregon. So it was originally a $2 billion campaign that was publicly launched in 2014. And then in 2018, just before we reached our $2 billion goal, the university decided to stretch and go for $3 billion. So the law school hadn't yet made its $25 million goal at that point. And we had to come up with a stretch goal. So we were sort of in this awkward situation of essentially launching a new campaign before the end of the first goal. So we achieved our original goal, where our stretch goal was a bit too ambitious. And so I'm in this position now of, campaign wrap up and communicating to our board in particular about, reporting on the campaign for the university and for the law school in particular. So we've definitely had ups and downs, I think, with this, and kind of, scrapping for resources all along, because there's been turnover here at the development office over really what's turned out to be a 10-year campaign. So I would say it's too long. It's too long. I mean, it was a wonderful thing for the university, but there's definitely some of the tricks of that, right? Or fatigue, getting donors saying, aren't we always in a campaign? Yes, we're always in a campaign. And really trying to market this differently and talk about like the impact of all these wonderful gifts. And so we're just kind of settling into, what will be the next campaign, because it's around the corner, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that feedback. And, that's a very interesting, response when you get a stretch goal, and then sort of asking everyone to increase their goal instead of where the money actually might be coming from in order to hit that stretch goal. But we can all certainly sympathize. Does anybody else have any feedback on that topic before I talk about the next survey question? All right. So for those of you who are in a campaign, I was wondering if you felt you were adequately prepared and resourced. 13% of you said yes. 44% of you said no, and 44% of you said somewhat, which I think is probably about what I would have expected. For those of you, the two of you who answered that you felt you were prepared and resourced for your campaign, would anyone care to share what that looked like for your school? All right, well, we will continue to be curious, and maybe you can share when we do a breakouts.
Heather, this is Ann Beard at SMU. We just launched 2 weeks ago a $1.5 billion campaign. I shouldn't say two. And I feel like when I said that we were adequately prepared and resourced, I mean, you're never going to have enough resources. I think that's just kind of the steady state of development. So I sort of accept that is not really changing, but there was a great deal of preparation that went into up to the campaign. And with the silent phase, it had to be extended for a year because of the pandemic. So I think we had planned to launch last fall and didn't. So we were really ready to launch and to sort of get moving. So in that sense, yeah, I feel like we were definitely ready. don't know if you're going to address this later on, but I am curious down the road about silent phases. I know UT, I don't know if anyone from UT is on. They had an extremely long silent phase and are only going public for like 3 years or something. So, there are lots of ways to skin this cat. And I'm just curious, I'll be interested to see if that's perhaps a way to go in the future, because campaigns are not going anywhere.
Yes, exactly. And thanks for bringing that up. I'm hoping to discuss that. We're going to have 2 breakouts, one for those not in a campaign and one for those who are in a campaign or silent phase. So we can sort of discuss some of the pros and cons of a short versus a long silent phase, and then come back and share that with the group. So thank you for that. For those not in a campaign, I asked if you feel as if you know what you need to be properly resourced, and 38% of you said yes, 19% of you said no, and 44% of you said somewhat. So I'm hopeful, like through our discussions and through our conversations, we can offer some more clarity there. I will say it's different for every institution. It's going to depend on the resources you're getting provided for you centrally, and the amount of work that they're doing ahead of a campaign will certainly determine the resources that you need. But I am hopeful that, we can at least give you some information in the session that can help you advocate for more resources. I don't think there's anyone on this call who would ever say, I don't need another gift officer. But I do think that, for a campaign, really being able to come in and make the case, depending on your prospects, for that gift officer is really crucial, because the more people you have out there on the road, the more you're going to be able to, succeed in closing some of those gifts. But resources come in lots of shapes and sizes. It's not just people. It's a lot of other things. So we can talk more about that. For those of you in a campaign, do you feel confident that you'll hit your campaign goal? 56% of you said yes, and 44% of you said no. That's a little bit more of an even breakdown that I was expecting, which leads me to think that maybe a lot of people on this call weren't properly resourced for the campaign, or there wasn't some work that was happening ahead of time that would have helped you all out. I also understand that there's probably a lot of turnover in institutions, and COVID also hasn't helped matters in a lot of places. So hopefully we can talk about that as well. And then, as a breakdown to that, for those who didn't feel confident, it's, a mix of things. So poor initial planning, a weak pipeline, not enough staff. 38% of you said other. Would anyone who said other to that question be willing to share with the group what some of those other reasons were? All right. Well, hopefully we can talk a little bit about that in the breakouts and then come back and share. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I could share the results. There, everybody has them. I'll go ahead and leave that up. And then I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and you can join whichever one you would like. There will be 2. I'll be moderating the one for those of you who are currently in campaigns or in the silent phase. And my colleague, Emily Cherry from the University of Richmond, is going to moderate the room for those of you who currently are not in campaigns or just out of a campaign. And so let me go ahead and see if I can open these, and then we'll bring you back. Oh, yes.
Before we go, this is Mindy, and I'm from McGeorge School of Law, which is part of University of the Pacific. Before we go to breakout, I just wanted to let everybody know, and I'm going to share this with our group, that we're launching a legal education advancement blog. So the first iteration, or the first post, will be coming out Thursday morning, so I'll make sure that I send that. But we're really trying to focus on legal advancement campaigns, gifts, kind of try and get more networking out about what we all do. And so I just wanted to let the group know. I don't know if anybody else blogs or if anybody else does any legal education advancement blogging. But I just want to let the group know that I'll send the first one out. And what I'm planning on doing is linking to all the things that you guys are all doing so that the legal education world knows how important what we do is, so that we're not like the best kept secret, etc. So anyway, long story short, I don't want to, monopolize. You probably all just saw we closed a $25 million gift, which was just, oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was elated for a tiny little law school in California. But anyway, so I look forward to connecting with all of you, but look forward to our legal education advancement blog coming to your mailbox soon.
Great, thank you. And definitely be sure to share that on the listserv, and we'll make sure that we. And if you want to ask for bloggers or anyone to participate through that means, we're happy to push that out as well. And congratulations on that great gift.
Thank
All
you,
right.
and thank you.
All right, so we are going to go into the breakout rooms. We're going to go in for about 25 minutes, and I'll bring everyone back out at 5 till, where we can just sort of share what we've discussed with the group and any key takeaways. So let's go ahead and. All right, I've opened the room, so just go ahead and choose which one you'd like to go into. And for those going into the campaign silent phase room, I will be there in just a minute.
Hey, Heather, I'm not seeing anything on my end to join a room.
All right, no worries, Lauren. Which I can assign you. Which one would you like to go into?
The one that doesn't have a campaign.
All right, so all right, you're heading that way now.
Thank you.
Hi, can you also, Heather, add me to the one without the campaign? This is Camille.
Sure. All right, Camille, off you go.
Thank you.
Me too, please.
All right, Allie, campaign or not a campaign?
Not a campaign. Thank you.
All right, off you go. All right, so thanks for coming back, everyone. With the last couple of minutes, I thought we would just share a little bit about what was discussed in the breakout rooms, and if there are any good tips or tricks. I also encourage, if something wasn't discussed or not answered, throw it on the listserv, and we can continue the discussion there. I think we've had some really robust conversations over there, and it's been really helpful for a lot of people. So real quick, in the current campaign, silent phase campaign, we talked a lot about case statements and, the case for support. And, how do you whittle it down? How do you create something compelling and dynamic that isn't, everything to everyone? So we gave a lot of feedback about our processes at different schools, how we worked with the deans and leaderships to identify priorities, the concept of using buckets to encompass a lot of ideas, and then the actual physical thing that we were creating. Is it a printed document? Is it, videos, stories? And everyone's doing a lot of different things to make that dynamic. And I just thought the feedback was really great. If anybody would like to share their case for support, we also can keep those. So we can put those on the listserv, or if you want to send them, I can make sure they get to our team and we store them. So Emily, anything from your end?
Yeah, and just a quick plug for our AALS Institutional Advancement Sharing Sheet that is linked every month in the newsletter. You can always upload links to files you have that you want to share with your colleagues there. One thing that we talked about that I think resonates with a lot of us is how to kind of differentiate the law school and how to communicate, how to work with the Central University when it comes to a law campaign under the umbrella of a larger university campaign, and some of the struggles there, and how we advocate for ourselves while being team players, and what messages that we can develop that are specifically unique to the law school that still resonate with university leadership. And we also did a little bit of kind of commiserating, but that was kind of one of the main themes that emerged as something that really resonated with a bunch of our participants. And we also celebrated Mindy's 25 million gift, so that was very exciting. Got a cool picture of that, so of Mindy and the donors. So that was awesome.
Very cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We're right on time. I really appreciate the conversation. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, and we will keep this going. Good luck with your campaigns.
Thanks, Heather. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Nice seeing you.